I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. This episode is brought to you by Dollar Shave Club. I'm sure you've heard about them before. They are great razors with no hassle. You join the club for a super nominal fee, and you'll have a choice between 2, 4, and 6 blade razor cartridges. They'll come to your mailbox every month, and you don't have to worry about buying razors anymore. I've been using these guys for probably 3 or 4 years now, and I love them. It's great to have brand new, fresh razors anytime you want them, without having to think about them or hassle with all those weird contraptions and keys and finding managers and stuff at the store. So check them out. Click on the link on the Support the Show page and get started. Welcome back, guys. In this episode, I got the opportunity to interview Jeff Cesario. He is a veteran comedian with a whole list of accolades and awards, and he's a pretty funny dude. I first heard him on the Adam Carolla Show, and I reached out, and lo and behold, he was down with an interview. I'm not going to spend too much time introducing this gentleman, because I'm going to let some other people introduce him. But make sure you follow him on Twitter, and check out his new podcast, Play with Pain, with Chet Waterhouse. Here you go, guys.
Yeah, talk to me.
You're watching Kenosha Community Media.
Jeff Cesario was born right here in Kenosha, graduating from Bradford and then the University of Wisconsin-Madison before leaving town to pursue his love of music and sports journalism. He eventually moved into comedy, where he's hugely successful with appearances on The Tonight Show, Letterman, Conan, Ferguson, and Comedy Central. He's won 2 Emmys and many other awards as a writer and producer on shows such as Dennis Miller Live, Larry Sanders, Queen Latifah, and currently The Hannibal Buress Show. He also remains a proud cheesehead and loves his Green Bay Packers. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so thrilled to present to you Jeff Cesario.
In this program, he is a terribly talented stand-up comedian and can be seen in person starting tomorrow at Harrah's in Lake Tahoe. Please say hello to Jeff Cesario.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. My next guest is a very funny comedian. He's on the Dick Rossi Show. He's on the funnyordie.com. Please welcome Jeff Cesario, everybody.
A young comedian making his first appearance on this show, maybe his first network television appearance. I'm not sure. His name is Jeff Cesario. This is a good night for a new comedian who's making his first appearance because you're in a good mood, and that's always helpful to somebody who has not done this show before. Jeff is from originally the state of Wisconsin, and he performs. Like a lot of the young comedians, he performs frequently at the Improvisation here in Hollywood, and so would you welcome him, please? Jeff Cesario. Jeff. I've said it before, it is always nice to see a new young comedian come out and do that well. Jeff Cesario is his name. He'll be back.
Tonight's show is one that I've been waiting to do for a long time, and now I devote it to today's outstanding young stand-up comics. We have a few performers who represent the cream of the current comedy crop. Now let's begin our salute to stand-up comedy. He's appeared on The Tonight Show more often than Johnny Carson has. He's done several of his own specials on cable TV, and is a winner of 2 Ace Awards. He's a winner with us, too. Welcome, Jeff Cesario, right here.
Everybody, I want to welcome to the podcast Jeff Cesario. He is a comedian, a writer, a multi-award winner. Welcome to the show, man. Welcome to Fascination Street.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. We're going to talk about a bunch of things, mostly you, but just to kind of give everybody an idea of who you are and kind of what you're about. You used to be a drummer a long time ago?
That's correct. It increases the blood pressure, decreases your muscle awareness. And at my age, neither of those are great. So I don't do much drumming anymore.
Well, I do know how old you are, and I have to say that I was wildly surprised at your age after hearing you for, years.
Yeah.
And even seeing you.
I'm 103.
Yeah, you don't look 103. You don't even look half that.
No, I could easily pass for 90. No, I feel great. When you get the opportunity to do something that you really like, it does peel away a lot of stress. So that's my key. It's certainly not money. I wish my key was money. Make oodles of money. It's not bad advice, really.
I've heard worse advice.
Yeah, really. I bet you have.
So first, I want to, this is a little bit late, but I want to congratulate you on your 2 Emmy wins.
Thank you. A couple of decades late, but when someone's blowing smoke up your ass, you just take it. I'll take it.
All right, rock
They were
on.
not easy to come by, Flip.
Well, I don't have any.
They were for Dennis Miller Live, which was Dennis Miller's HBO show, which happened right after a brief nationally syndicated talk show that he had, and that was not a good experience. And after that, HBO came up to Denny and said, we want you to do a show where you essentially just do that ranting kind of thing that Dennis does so well. We were friends from stand-up. He just called me up and he said, would you like to executive produce my show? And I had never done anything like it, so it sounded like a fun challenge, and I dove head first into it. We got some lucky breaks along the way. We had a couple of good guests that I helped finagle, and Jim Carrey and Robin Williams, some great guests that clearly knew Dennis, were huge fans of Dennis, and so agreed to come on a fledgling show. And within our first 8 shows, we won 2 Emmys, and then that kind of set the show for a long run. I left after 3 seasons, but I believe it lasted 9 seasons on HBO. And really, Steve, it was the first cable series to beat a network series in a major category, which was writing. We beat Letterman and The Tonight Show and shows like that. But we were really the first cable show to do that. Up to that point, I think cable had only won Emmys in the sort of guest star in a limited movie type award. And then we were lucky enough to win. And within about 3 years, the Ace Awards went bye-bye, which were the cable version of the Emmy. We kind of helped be the first little leak of water in that dam, and then it just burst, and that was that, and I was extraordinarily proud to be a part of that.
So the Cable Ace Awards kind of went away because all the cable shows got included into the Emmys?
Yep, and I think when they saw that, and not just the cable people, but when the network people and the Academy members saw that it could happen, that the quality of work was indeed up to, and in cases beyond what's happening on network, then they realized, okay, we're all in this together, and it's all one platform, whether it's television or cable, and then a decade later, whether it's cable or satellite, 3 years after that, whether it's satellite or your home computer screen, hence the term multi-platform, and that really kind of started with that little bit of magic.
Now, you won 2 Emmys and 2 Cable Ace Awards, but you were nominated for a couple more Emmys?
Let me see, yes, I was nominated, what did I...
Larry Sanders.
Yeah, oh, that's right, yes, we got nominated. Larry Sanders. We got nominated once, I believe. I worked maybe 3-4 years ago with Billy Crystal on the Oscars, and that was nominated for an Emmy. So, yeah, I did have a couple more Emmy nods. I had a few more Ace Award wins, too. I won Best Writing for my own special on Showtime and a couple other things I think I snuck in there. Before they went the way of the dodo, they are now quite an attractive doorstop in the home. They prevent many doors from blowing during windy afternoons. Martin Mull called the Ace Award a combination of Emmy and a hood ornament, which I thought was a pretty funny description. Martin Mull's really one of the funniest humans ever.
I heard he's a really good painter, an artist as well.
Yes. I think a growing minority of stand-ups who develop some sort of intellectual and emotional pleasure from something else. Most stand-ups prefer the adoration of strangers, and that's that. But more and more, I think you're seeing well-adjusted stand-ups find enjoyment in other areas of their life, including their family.
Okay, so you also co-wrote Jack Frost.
That is right. That was my first foray into a film, and it was a great experience. It was tremendous fun. I was literally the last writer on the project. As you may or may not know, a lot of times in the movie business, many writers will write and rewrite the same script before it gets to the screen. And I was literally the last of 10 or 11 people on that movie, but I wound up doing enough and the Writers Guild has quantitative measurements that then have to be sort of subjectively interpreted to credit, and I managed to do enough work on it in terms of original character arc and character development and story development, stuff like that, to share credit with two other excellent writers. And I came on very late. They had already started shooting in Tahoe, and I jumped in, and probably the greatest thing to come out of that was an endearing friendship with Michael Keaton and with the director. So can't ask for more than that. If you actually find two solid human beings on a show business project, you're in pretty good shape.
I've heard that before. Who was the director of Jack Frost?
Troy Miller. You may know him best for directing Arrested Development, for directing Mr. Show with Bob and Dave. He's gone on to do many fun, innovative things, including Eagle Heart, the Chris Elliott series. That was on Adult Swim, and many, many things. I think he's currently doing Arrested Development for Netflix. And he's done some other movies, and he's a net director, has his own production company. Really interesting guy.
Cool. So a long time ago, like back in the teens or the 20s, you were on like some sort of a Bob Hope kind of variety show or special or something. What was that?
It was it was a Bob Hope Young Comedian special, and I'm not even quite qualified for that moniker then. But it was me, Jeff Foxworthy, Jeff Dunham, Carol Leifer, and the late, great John Henton, Henton. Very funny comedian. So they had 5 of us, and it was, I believe, the first project Bob did after his first stroke. It was a comeback project for him on NBC. So he hosted, but he also had a legend of comedy come out to help introduce each of the 5 young comedians. So I believe Milton Berle did it. I think Carl Reiner may have done it. I know Betty White did it. It was great fun, and I got a little bit of a chance to talk to Bob. And then the comics just came out, and each did 6 minutes, and then the next legend of comedy would come out, and Kivitz would have been, by having that additional layer of support, I think it gave Bob the confidence to power his way through the entire hour and a half show, whatever it was. But it was a blast. The biggest memory of that is we were taping teasers for the affiliates after the show. So wherever the region was that the comic was strongest in, they would have that comic join Bob Hope, do little teasers for, Fox, where they did the NBC affiliate in Atlanta and Nashville and Dallas and Birmingham and stuff like that. And I went out and did, I think it was Minneapolis, Chicago, Milwaukee, because I'm an upper Midwest guy. We were taping those little teasers, and it was classic sort of, hey, this is Bob Hope here with young Jeff Cesario. And then I'd have a line, hey, stay tuned for the special on KARE in Minneapolis or whatever. And during one of those, Bob dropped a line. I just missed it on the prompter, and I just picked it up, and we finished the tease without having to do another take. And Bob just leaned into me, and he went, good boy. I just thought, all right, I can die happy now.
Oh, my gosh. So how awesome was it to hear that voice say your name?
Oh, it's ridiculous. I mean, thrill of a lifetime. As thrilling as my first Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. So, those are legendary people, and they create legendary moments for guys like myself.
So you brought up Carson. Thank you for bringing him up. You were on Carson like 7 or 8 times, right?
With Johnny, yeah, I did. I think 7 with Johnny and 8 with Jay. And then by then I had leapt off to do Dennis Miller Live, and my own performing career kind of took a back seat as my producing and writing career kind of started to get some traction. So I didn't do as many talk show appearances after that. I kind of did a lot of Lettermans. I did some Conans, I should say, and I did some Late Show with Ferguson, and things that were local for me and a little easier to do because I was executive producing Dennis Miller Live, and then I went from there and did some other stuff in TV, and then I got into movies through Jack Frost, and then I went back to TV with a talk show with Spike Feresten and Queen Latifah and Russell Brand, and most recently Anthony Anderson and Hannibal Buress. So something had to take a back seat in my own performing career, but can only do so much.
Really?
So, when your natural vibe kind of hits, you got to go, well, let me use my energy wisely here. I'm not sure I could have kept up a performing career to the level that I had done it up to that point. So I thought I better focus on doing a good job for Dennis, and then I wound up really enjoying that role, and I thought, I'll take it.
So how instrumental do you think Johnny Carson was in getting your career kick-started?
He was the key. Back then, there was a funnel with a really big top opening and a ridiculously small bottom opening. And really, the bottom opening was The Tonight Show. That was it in the 80s. There was no really other avenues to explore if you wanted to be a successful stand-up. You busted your butt. You got 4 or 5 Tonight Show-worthy sets together before the talent coordinator for Tonight Show deemed you ready. There were very few comics who just had one killer shot. Jim McCauley, who was the talent coordinator at the Tonight Show, wanted to make sure that if Johnny liked you, you had another 3 or 4 bullets in the gun, and you could come back any time in the next 6 months and blast out another couple of spots. So that was the road to success. Now, shortly thereafter, people like Roseanne, who also did a Tonight Show and crushed it and did several, people like Tim Allen, who did not get on the Tonight Show, but found the very first way around it, which was to develop a sitcom around his stand-up, and his stand-up was so strong and so identifiable that that worked. And then in the 90s, the platforms started to disperse with cable and stand-up becoming more popular on cable, and then shows becoming more popular on cable, comedy shows and even sitcoms. Then the thing started to diversify, and certainly the broadcast outlets diversified greatly. But in the 70s, 80s, the only way to get any success was to get on the Tonight Show and kill it and get asked back and then keep going and then hopefully do panel and then hopefully have someone interested in developing some sort of show around you, whether it was a sitcom or talk show or something like that. So it was completely instrumental in putting me on the map, in raising my price in clubs and colleges, which allowed me to make a better living and allowed me to focus more on the art and worry less about paying my rent. It got me on the map inside show business. Agents and managers became aware of me, liked what they saw. Even people who were just shopping for writers for their own clients liked what they heard and saw in my stand-up because I prided myself in writing a solid joke and an efficient joke. So it was absolutely instrumental in launching my career.
Wow. Back in probably the mid-'80s, I was watching some sort of an HBO stand-up comedy special, and there was this guy who like ran around the stage and he played like a tennis racket, and then music would come out of the speakers. He did like this whole sort of sketch where he was in his bedroom, playing a guitar with a tennis racket, and then he pulled out like these giant oversized sunglasses and he read the side of the box, "Everybody's wearing them." And he was like, "Yeah, on Venus perhaps." And I lost my shit. I laughed so hard. But I've never ever been able to remember who that was. And I was wondering if you, being in the scene back then, had any idea who that might have been.
Boy, it doesn't quite ring a bell. It sounds like it could be a guy named Harry Basil. Sounds like it could be in the realm of Angel Sanchez, I think. It sounds like it's also could be, it sounds a little bit similar to Howie Mandel, although it doesn't sound like Howie, but it's sort of in that groove.
Well, it definitely wasn't Howie.
There's a guy out of Philly named the legendary Wid who did a prop act, and he brought up 2 huge barrels. One was full of his props, and he would just do the props from the full barrel, and then just almost as an aside, just literally throw them into the empty barrel until the full barrel was empty and the empty barrel was full, and then he was done with his act. It might have been Wid. I don't know. It would be somewhere in those 4 guys, I would imagine.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. I know that was a little bit of a brain teaser, but I figured since I had you, I might as well give that one a shot.
There was another guy named Pat Hazel, who actually was also a magician, but a very funny stand-up who did some prop stuff, and it might have been Pat. I think he might have done a Young Comedian special somewhere in there. I'm not sure. He's worth checking out.
Well, thank you, sir.
Sure.
So when did you know that you wanted to do comedy, and why comedy?
I was always fascinated by the comics that I would see on The Tonight Show as a kid, staying up late watching The Tonight Show and seeing Dick Gregory and Godfrey Cambridge, Franklin Ajaye, and David Brenner and Robert Klein, and just these tremendous Toady Fields and Joan Rivers, and just great comics. And I always found a palpable connection to that. It was biological, it was visceral. And, when you're 11 or 12, that really connects, because you don't even know what it means. You just know it's the pit of your stomach's telling you to try something. I kind of flirted with it. I did some comedy in high school with a tremendously talented friend of mine who's actually an unbelievable drummer and is now head of jazz and percussion at Indiana University. His name's Steve Houghton. And Steve and I did several sketches for the high school variety show, and I was definitely bitten by the bug. And Steve had great timing, being a great drummer, and had a natural comedic knack as well. So we clicked, and we were quite popular for having done those. And, once you get a whiff of that drug, hard to let go. So I did go to college then at University of Wisconsin and played a lot of music. I was a musician before I was a comedian. And then later in life, I said, I got to try this. In my 20s, my late 20s, I just went, I got to give this a shot before I'm 40. And Lord knows what I'd be doing for a living. And looking back going, I should have tried stand-up. So I gave it a shot, and it was all because I had this drive inside of me. Whenever I would go to a live comedy show, Steve, I would sit in the audience and think to myself, I'm not supposed to be here, I'm supposed to be up there. And I would never verbalize it because you'd look like a complete a-hole. But I could feel it, and I said, I can't even go to shows anymore. I just have to start working on an act. And I kept notes constantly through high school, college, and everything. So I did have a notebook to start with when I finally decided to do it, and most of it was crap. But I did start, and I did get the ball rolling, and I was fortunate to choose Minneapolis, where I had a buddy who was a musician, and I knew I could work playing drums in wedding bands and stuff like that and just make some dough. And I had an ex-girlfriend up there who was, a friend, and I knew I could get some help in what for me was a bigger city at the time, because I'd only been used to Madison, Wisconsin. So I just moved to Minneapolis, and I was very lucky. The very first class of comics out of there was Louis Anderson and Joel Hodgson, who created Mystery Science Theater 3000, and Liz Winstead, who created The Daily Show, and two tremendous television writers, Joel Madison and Sid Youngers, both who worked on Roseanne, both who went on to create other great shows. So that first batch of comics out of Minneapolis was pretty ridiculous for a small but mighty bunch of guys. And there weren't a lot of stand-ups, so, but there was a lot of repeat business in the clubs, so they needed new blood. And I was it. I was one of the 2 or 3 new guys who came to the scene in a 6-month period, and they just kept throwing us to the wolves, saying, you got to write new material. We're getting the same 80 people at the show this week that we had last week, and, we're not bothering to change our acts. So you're a writer. Write new stuff. So it was great. I don't envy young comedians in a way, because I got to make all my mistakes, Steve, in the relative anonymity and peace of crappy clubs in and around Minneapolis. And I could make huge blunders, massive mistakes, and only 12 people would remember them, and myself. So I could learn from those in quiet. And today, almost everybody's set everywhere is recorded and winds up somewhere, especially if you make a blunder. So that part of it, I certainly don't envy young comics, but I got to grow fast in a climate. By my second year in comedy, I was getting 2.5 hours of stage time a week, which is crazy.
Wow.
So,
that
you learn
crazy.
fast. You learn fast when you're chopping that much time.
That's crazy. How hard is it to write for another comedian?
For me, not that hard. I enjoy writing, period. I like to sort of dive into someone else's voice. If I respect that person, I can write for them. If I don't, it's much harder. So I try to pick only people that I respect, and I've had good luck with that. And Dennis Miller and I were kind of two sides of the same coin. I mean, Dennis was a little darker and a little more intellectual, a little brighter, and a little more politically focused. And he was so organically that guy that it just cut through. I was a little more generic, especially in my first 10 years in the business. And I think Dennis had a razor's edge that really set him apart. But really, when you broke down our jokes, they were a similar writing style, which is how we became friends. We became friends before anything happened to either of us. And we became fast friends because we wrote very similar. We would riff without even trying. We would just strike up a conversation and start to riff jokes, and it was, a match made in heaven, and I'm really fortunate to have had that in my career. And he was a great guy. It was really easy to write for. Shandling was a breeze to write for. Those were two guys who said, hands down, don't worry about writing in my voice. Just write a great joke. I'll put my voice on it. You don't have to worry about that. That's incredibly liberating. And both Gary Shandling, and Dennis Miller did that. And in addition to that, I learned a tremendous amount about narrative storytelling from Gary and about my own stand-up. Gary was really the guy who helped me transition from just a good writer of monologue-style jokes to someone who could begin to reflect something about themselves on stage. Gary was incredibly self-aware, self-deprecating, but also very funny and very appealing and very warm. And when I saw that you could do both, that you could do what Gary did, you could combine great joke writing with a healthy dose of your own personality and make it work, that's when I said, okay, I got to explore this a little better and a little further. So those were probably the two most influential guys. And then Seinfeld, without a doubt, just watching Jerry work. I'll never forget the two biggest things I ever saw on TV that helped push me over the edge and get me into stand-up was I saw Richard Pryor live and in concert at the State Theater in Chicago with a nearly all African-American audience. And me and a white buddy of mine, a writer, we just went. And, I mean, that special, his first special, Pryor's first special, literally blew the roof off of this theater. It was chaos, and it was so unbelievable. And I just stared at the screen just saying, he is so far and above what I want to do, and yet he makes me want to do it. It wasn't like, I can't do that. It was like, I want to try. And then literally within a week, I saw one of the first ever HBO Young Comedians special. I think it was a Rodney Dangerfield hosted special. Seinfeld was on it. And he was killing with these great sharp jokes. But he kind of looked like me. He was about my height. He was Jewish. I was Italian. And I went, oh, I get it. If you just start working on the jokes, the other stuff will come. So that 1-2 punch got me into stand-up. And then further along in my career, Jerry was very influential in helping me procure some great work and in just being generally a fan. And whenever my name would come up, he would always speak of me in high tones. So I've always appreciated that. And he's a great guy to make laugh. Seinfeld is the most fun guy on the planet to actually try to make laugh. I live to make Jerry laugh sometimes. It's just the best thing in the world.
I've heard a lot of people in his circles say that he's like the most fun to try and make laugh.
Yeah, because it comes from his gut. It's not. He doesn't think about anything. It's great. It's great when you can make him laugh with the smallest, the tiniest things. I remember I did it with a body move once. I just was doing an impression of my repairman looking at my dryer, and it's some sort of high-end computerized dryer, so they've got to look through this computerized lens into your dryer. And I don't know what I was expecting, but this guy just kind of stuck his ass out and leaned over the dryer, and then after 10 seconds looked up and went, yep, we're getting you a new dryer. And it just crushed Seinfeld. Just the impression of the way the guy actually stood over my dryer was pretty funny. So
how long ago was that?
Oh, Lord. That's back when we were working on the Marriage Rep together, which is a show that Jerry executive produced that was on NBC Primetime for a couple of years.
Did you write on that show?
Blast to work on. I did.
My wife and I watched that show, and we still quote it every now and then. There was.
Oh, that's great.
I think Jimmy Fallon was one of the guests, and there was this guy who had like white spiky hair, and he was complaining about something, and I think it was Jimmy Fallon who said, look, I'm not saying this guy's an idiot. I'm just saying that idiot already exists. And then they put up a picture of Guy Fieri.
Right.
My wife and I still, every time we either see Guy Fieri or Anne Burrell, or just some random asshole with frosted tips, we just look at each other and say, that idiot already exists.
Yeah, right, exactly. That was so much fun. That writer's room, was a blast. The production was fraught with peril from the get-go. And the show subsequently roller coastered in terms of there were some unbelievably weird, incomprehensible moments, and then there were unbelievably hilarious moments. But one of the things I got out of that show was a friendship with Tom Papa, who's just a great guy and was a great host, really quick on his feet, and just genuinely funny. Then the writer's room was Jerry, Tom Papa, me, and a great comedian writer named Chuck Martin. That was it. It was just the four of us making each other laugh and then trying to figure out a way to shoehorn that into the show. We had a blast. It was really, really a lot of fun.
So how did it come about that you worked on the Queen Latifah show?
You know, I was at a point where I wanted a little different kind of challenge. I'd been working in late night as a executive producer and a supervising producer and a head writer and stuff like that. And I just thought, this job opportunity came along to be head writer on her daytime show. And I'd always been a huge fan of hers. I always thought she was a great musician, which I could relate to, and a really gifted actress, which I could not relate to. I mean, I'm not a very good actor, but I could admire it and respect it. And then a really good comedic actress, which I could relate to. And I just thought, man, this could really go somewhere. And, I went up for it. Didn't get it the first time, but got on staff. And then shortly thereafter, by the second season, I was head writer. And let me tell you, daytime, boy, I thought stand-up comedy club was a cutthroat business. Daytime television is the Shark Tank of all Shark Tanks. I mean, it's unbelievable, the factions involved in putting on a daytime show. You got your talent people, then you got your human interest people, then you got your game people, then you got your comedy people. I mean, there's 15 cooks in the kitchen, and they all have to be satisfied. It's an insane environment in which to try to do a good show, let alone a funny show. I admire anybody to do it well. But the greatest thing to come out of that was that I had a great time with her. Latifah is hilarious. I mean, hilarious. And, boy, I'm telling you, she walked right in, and the writer's room was small. It was just me and a great writer named Beth Sherman, a great writer named Robin Thede, who's now hosting her own show on BET, and our exec producer, who was also a writer, named Todd Yasui. That was it. And Todd was busy 90% of the time putting out fires in everywhere else in the show. So it was kind of the three of us, me and Beth and Robin, and the friendships with them, and then subsequently a female writer named Robin Henry, who came on board second season. And the friendships with Latifah were the best things to come out of the show. They were unbelievable. Plus, Latifah came in very first day and just said, she knew who we were, and she knew we were stand-ups, and certainly, in my case, a stand-up of some note. You know, I'd done The Tonight Show and had my own specials and stuff. She came right in and said, listen, I'm not going to do a monologue at the beginning of the show because I have too much respect for what you guys do. I want to be funny, but I want to be like Carol Burnett or Carson. Sometimes I want to play straight man. Other times I'll be the funny person, but give me something to react off of, and that's when we're going to be our best. And she was so right. The best stuff we did on that show was when we did stupid characters, or we even brought in Fred Willard, brought in Tim Conway, we brought in Vicki Lawrence, we brought in old school classic comedy type people, and they crushed it every time. And I had the pleasure of doing 2 or 3 characters myself, and boy, that was fun. That was a tremendous amount of fun, and made up for the moments that were not so much fun on daytime television that you just get thrust on you as a writer, you know, literally like, okay, we got someone who wants a pair of shoes. Write a funny line for him. What? You know, it gets complete insanity. Quite an experience, Steve. Quite an experience.
And stuff like that kind of has to be on the fly, right? You don't have a lot of lead time to write a joke for somebody who just wants a pair of shoes.
No, and the panic, though, is kind of the fun of it. And then it's also the heart of it, because the panic is not just the panic of we've got to write a funny line, but the panic is we have to write a funny line that has some takeaway and info for the viewer at home, but also won't offend the network, the affiliates, our studio, or our sponsors. You've got 12 seconds. You know, so it's like, yikes! It was like being shot out of a cannon like once every 10 minutes, every day, a year and a half, 2 years.
Oh, man, that sounds crazy.
It was pretty insane.
So on the second episode of Play with Pain, your new podcast, and so Rick Riley asked Chet, what caddy has won the most majors? And Chet said,
Yes.
do you remember what Chet said?
Chunky Harris or something like that?
Chet said Chunky Owens.
Chunky Owens, sure.
Yeah, and so at first...
Tell me that doesn't sound like a caddy.
Yeah, it definitely
For
sounds like a
anybody
caddy.
who doesn't know, I do a sports announcer character named Chet Waterhouse and do him on Adam Carolla Show, and Adam was so kind in having me on. There's another guy, quite frankly, the newest guy who's been extremely helpful in my career, and Adam was just a fan, and I started doing it every couple of weeks on Carolla's podcast, and we got enough traction where Chet Waterhouse, the wacky, inaccurate, but enthusiastic sportscaster, got his own podcast. And we're on episode 2. Norm Chad is the voice of the World Series of Poker, and the second was Rick Riley, who's just hilarious. We had a good time.
So that all came about just because of your multiple hilarious, crowd-pleasing appearances on the Adam Carolla Show?
Absolutely.
And so,
completely, 100% because of that.
So did Podcast One reach out to you, or was that something that you and Adam went to Podcast One with, or how did that happen?
They reached out to me, and I think, if this goes well, what they would eventually, what hopefully we could eventually do is let Chet Waterhouse do the teases for all the Podcast One sports shows, Hey, coming up, Stone Cold Steve Austin, because you do not want Stone Warm Steve Austin. Whatever idiocy Chet comes out with, and do little interstitials and things all throughout the Podcast One Sports Network. And then I'll have my own podcast, which I do, and I like to keep it at about a half hour just because it feels right for Chet. You don't want to belabor Chet too much.
Indeed. Well, I'm enjoying it. I'm having a blast. I was super excited that you came on to the Carolla Show all those months ago or a year ago or whatever it was, and you kept coming back. You
just
kept
May
back.
and June of last year, yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, kept being fresh and kept just being hilarious, and I was really excited to hear that there was a new podcast coming, and that it was going to be Chet, or you, or Chet. So
yeah, it's Chet. Play with Pain.
So congrats.
Hosted by Chet Waterhouse and brought to you by Incognito. You'd never guess we're plumbers. That's the whole fun of it, is to just do those is really the biggest kick I get out of it. And then to ask legitimate questions, just to see what guys will say, a legitimate question out of this idiot is really fun. It's been a blast, and I imagine it's going to continue being a blast for quite some time, as long as they'll have me.
Well, I would hope that it's going to last forever. So Rick Riley seemed like he wasn't really prepared for what was about to happen.
I don't know if you can prepare for Chet. It's he was really prepared in the sense that he had a pop quiz ready to go for me, and Rick is an extremely funny guy, so he prefers to play in the moment, and so look, Chet can go anywhere the guest goes. All of it's fun for me, and all I want is for them to be having fun, period. And if that's the way he's having fun, believe me, Chet will make hay off it. I'll figure out a way to make hay off it.
So how did you come up with Chet Waterhouse? Like, what inspired that?
I'd always loved sportscasters, and I always thought they were really funny. And the worse they got, the funnier it got for me. And I do a lot of sports material in my stand-up act, and it kind of grew out of that. I used to do a bit on Kurt Gowdy was the first guy to know one completely irrelevant fact about everybody on the field of play, but he'd wait till a crucial moment in the game to throw it out there. 3 seconds left in the game, bounce back to pass, he hits Johnson, the 40, the 30, the 20, he's allergic to shellfish, touchdown! That was Gowdy, that was Kurt Gowdy, that was like his calling card. And that always made me laugh. And then, of course, certainly the classics, Marv Albert, who was a genuinely funny guy, and would slide these things in, and Bob Bucher is hilarious, and he would slide these very funny, dry things in. They were fun. And then there was a guy in Wisconsin named Earl Gillespie who did University of Wisconsin football, and when I was a kid, the Badgers were horrible. But he always made the game sound interesting, when you're 12 and you're listening on the radio. And he would do things like, there's a kickoff from Illinois, Billy Merrick under it for the Badgers at the 5. He's churning, spinning, driving to the 6. And Well, Earl, he fell down, but, Earl made it sound exciting. So I like the hyperbole. I like the exaggeration. I like the bad commercial endorsements. And I started to do that in my act and named the guy Chet Waterhouse very early, probably early 80s, my first couple of years in comedy already. I was doing a version of it in my act. And he stayed with me ever since, and I've done him in various incarnations. I did him on radio out here in California, 90-91 on K-Rock, which was the big alternative rock station out here, and did him for a couple of years, and did him on a station in Milwaukee for a couple of years in the early 2000s, and various and assorted ways that Chet has found his way. But this has been the most fun, and I think I've really found a great audience for Chet. Adam Carolla's audience really has responded to this character in a strong way, and I just hope to keep that going.
I think that your stint on K-Rock is where Adam first heard you. I think that's what he said.
Yeah, that's right. He said when he was, even before he was really even fully into comedy, I think he was doing it, but not full time. He was still doing some construction work, and he'd be going to work in his truck, hear me, and it was right before Jimmy Kimmel took over at K-Rock. He became the sports guy at K-Rock, and I wasn't able to do it because, I couldn't go in every day, and that was right about when Dennis Miller was starting to blow up, and I had to put my energy into that. So it opened the door, and Jimmy came in, and then Adam and Jimmy became great friends and producing partners and friends to this day. And I'm pretty sure Adam did not know it was me until the first time I did it on his podcast last May of 17. Because he literally looked up and went, "You're Chet Waterhouse." And it was pretty funny. So fortunately, he was a fan back then, and he's a fan now, and it's helped me and helped the character a lot. So my hat's off to Adam.
Well, it was really cool to hear the light bulb go off in his head when he found out that you were Chet. That was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool.
So, you mentioned Bob Uecker a few minutes ago, and we talked about Queen Latifah earlier, and of course me, and then Chunky, the caddy. It seems like we're bringing up a lot of Owenses.
Yeah, Chunky Owens. That's right. That's right. Dana Owens is Latifah's real name. I tell you, it's a name that comes rolling off the tongue, and it's a good name to have a weird nickname in front of because it balances it out. Right. Free Booty Owens. It has a slightly more believable level to it. You can't go funny nickname and funny last name because then it's a joke.
Right.
If I go Chunky Owens, people at home are going to go, "Was he the guy who used to do Craig Stadler, Chunky Owens?" They're not sure, and that's what I love about Chet. He can walk that line. And where you're not quite sure what's real and what's not. That makes it fun for me.
I'm a little bit younger than you, and I was never really into baseball. So the first time that I ever came across Bob Uecker, he was playing George Owens on Mr. Belvedere.
Oh, right. Yes. And deadpanning his way to some nice paycheck.
Yes, he did. And the only time I ever saw him get crazy was when he would do like Budweiser commercials or something, or Miller Lite or whatever it was. But yeah, that was.
You know what? I bet you can. You could Google or YouTube. Both Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang have unbelievable stories about Bob Uecker and spending some time with him in the broadcast booth. And all I'll say is the kill switch on Bob Uecker's microphone is a key character in the anecdotes. And you'll have an unbelievable new comedic respect for Bob Uecker when you get through with the Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang's anecdotes about Bob. They're hilarious.
Well, I will definitely have to check that out. So, real quick, tell me who is Dick Rossi?
Dick Rossi is another alter ego of mine who is a 60s talk show host. It's literally as if you gave the single lowest rung of the Rat Pack, gave him his own show. He did everything Johnny Carson did. He did it first, and he did it worse. And we have clips of the Dick Rossi show on Funny or Die. And it's another funny, stupid, weird thing that I did. the 60s talk show host, but with modern guests. Jimmy Kimmel's been a guest, Bill Burr, Aisha Tyler, a great actor named Chris McDonald, who's an old friend. And the key to Dick Rossi is he's just stuck in that 60s sort of swinging vibe. That's it. He's not breaking out of it. As is his sidekick, Tad Manchester, and his band leader, Spats Henderson, and his big-breasted all-girl orchestra. So it's just this crazy character that we had to come up with on the fly when myself and Joe Fury, who plays Tad Manchester, and Adam Felber, who plays Spats Henderson, were all writers on Spike Feresten's show on Fox called Fox Show with Spike Feresten, which lasted a couple seasons, 8-9 years ago. And literally at the 11th hour, the Fox exec said, well, you got to have a reason why we're doing a talk show again, because every talk show we've ever done is tanked, whether it's been Chevy Chase or Joan Rivers or Magic Johnson or whoever we've tried, it hasn't gone. So Joe and Adam created the character of a talk show host who was killing it in the 50s when there wasn't even a Fox. But that was comedic conceit, that he was killing it for Fox in the 50s, and then huge blunder on air, and overnight, America hated it. The blunder was that large. And so his ghost then haunted the studio in which Spike Feresten was trying to do a show, and all talk show hosts at Fox were trying to do their show, and he eventually torpedoed every show that came through there. So that was the conceit for the stupid little 1.5-minute bit. And the character inside the Spike Feresten show got some traction enough where Spike said, well, let's bring him back once or twice, let's have some fun. And we did, and the character got traction each time. And then the three of us left the show, and the show, I think, only lasted another season. But we were all sitting around having a beer one day and said, what can we do that's really funny that we can work on together? And Spike, to his credit, gave us his blessing to go pursue the character independently of the show. And we did a pilot for them, for FX, and we got very close and didn't quite make it. And then we did a pilot for History Channel and came very close and didn't quite make it on the air. But we had a lot of clips, so we just said, well, let's put them on Funny or Die and have some fun and see if we can't maybe get enough traction somewhere to keep doing Dick Rossi, even if it's just little hits, even if we just do 2 guests one day and then throw those up and see what happens and just keep going, because it is unbelievable fun to do. Unbelievable fun. As you can see, if your listeners go to Funny or Die and just search Dick Rossi, it'll come up, The Dick Rossi Show. And much beyond describing it that way I describe it. It's ridiculous.
That's awesome. Previous guest and former Carolla lackey Nick Davis now works at Funny or Die, so that's cool.
Yes, he does.
Yeah. So I read somewhere that you're doing a show with Brian Regan, but I read one place that it was going to be on Netflix and one place that it was going to be on HBO. Am I going crazy?
It will be on Netflix. I believe close to closing a deal. That's between those entities. But once it does close, I would come in and help produce that and have a lot of fun. He's an unbelievable comedian and a great guy. And, at this stage in my career, that's all I really want to work with. So we would have a blast doing that show. It would be some stand-up, maybe some sketches. We'll see. We'll have to sort of formulate it. But, yeah, it would be Netflix. It would be with Brian. And knock on wood, it'll happen because Brian really deserves a platform like that in addition to his stand-up. And we would rely heavily on his stand-up in the show because it's just so funny and so visual, the way Brian tells a bit and tells a joke. It's just great. You can just get lost in your own mental movie of what that bit might look like. That is a true gift for comedians.
Well, Brian is basically like the biggest comic in the last 25 years that hasn't had a TV show. So it'll be about time. Yeah, and again, I would say platforms have dispersed enough where, that used to be something you said 20 years ago maybe in show business. Hey, how come so-and-so can't get a show to stick? And now you look around and you go, Bill Burr made a career on the road. Kathleen Madigan, Lewis Black make massive career. I mean, these people are making a tremendous living. And because of social media,
able to create a following and a demographic that is quantifiable. And they can then take anywhere they want and sell whatever project they want to sell and try to do whatever they want, knowing they've got 500,000 fans on Twitter or whatever who are going to get the message out and maybe watch that project. So the field has changed. The playing field has changed. And people like that, people like Gabriel Iglesias, people like Sebastian Maniscalco, Eliza Schlesinger, people like that are playing 1,500-seat theaters, if not bigger. They're playing big rooms and making great money and establishing a tremendous demographic and using it as a great business tool with which to then go back, now that there's multi-platforms, and go to an Epix, go to a Netflix, go to a Showtime, go to IFC, go to so many places and say, here's an idea. What do you think of that? I mean, you look at Mark Maron, great example of that. He's been able to parlay a tremendous amount of hard work in the field of podcasting and take that across several platforms. He's made it work. You got to tip your cap to Dane Cook for helping show that is a business model and making it work.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I didn't really think of it like that, but I guess it kind of does go back to the Dane Cook era.
Yeah, Dane could go anywhere and say, look, I got 3 million followers. What's your deal?
Yeah.
Tell me why I should be here at Comedy Central or IFC or HBO or however many outlets. And now you're in a position where you've got a little more balance and weight in negotiation, and that's important. And then you look at a guy like Adam Carolla, who's done it all on his own. Movies, television, whatever, he can go to a network and say, I've got a great idea for a home improvement show and a massive demographic from my podcast, from my main podcast, my dozen ancillary podcasts, and my subsequent visibility. And they got to go, okay, why not? So he built that by himself, kind of brick by brick, which is ironic considering his background in construction.
And he literally built that studio.
Yes, he did. And the drywall, the insulation, the sheetrock, everything. It's all him.
I think he even put those lifts in the back. I'm pretty sure he did. Tell me about Barely Managed. How's that coming along?
Barely Managing is a television script that I have that people seem to like, and knock on wood, something good will happen with it. It is the story of a rock and roll manager who's thinking about semi-retiring, maybe mid-40s, late 40s. And he has to he's still active, but he has to pull his supergroup, sort of late 90s, 2000 supergroup back together because the lead singer's dying of cancer. And it's a very dark, funny look at the weird, shifting world of music that now exists through a guy whose true love is his career, and he can't really keep any sort of human relationship going. His love for managing rock bands puts to shame any other relationship he tries. And that's the story, and it's really funny, and I've had the good fortune to work with some great people and pick their brains about it, including Steve Gorman, the drummer for the Black Crowes, and Peter Angelis, the former manager of Van Halen and the Black Crowes. And guys like that who I just talk to relentlessly about this kind of character. Then to get him, for me to sit with him for what's the better part of 5 or 6 years and just put me into the character and make it a unique piece of work. And then to write it and hammer it out, and then it's a real fun piece, and I think it was a great vehicle for a really good actor who's looking for something to sink his teeth into. Knock on wood, we'll get some response for that. I also have a Chet Waterhouse animated script called Hello Again, Everybody, about Chet and his sidekick and a producer who are just doing all of those awful events that Chet always has to call. Hey, we're here for the interstate barehanded culvert hunt, and it's about that life. It's about Chet and his broadcast mate on the road in these crazy minor league small cities calling these bad events. So I've got 2 scripts that right now seem to be getting some good response, but it's showbiz. You never know. So knock on wood, we'll have a chance to elevate one of them and maybe make it.
Well, Netflix has Bill Burr's F is for Family and, of course, the hilarious BoJack Horseman. So maybe Netflix will be a good fit. Maybe that'll work out. That'd be cool.
Yeah, you never know. And again, to have the luxury, quite frankly, of being able to do Chet on Adam's podcast every couple of weeks, and now Chet's got his own podcast, and knock on wood, that'll get a little traction. all of that will then help when I go to sell the Chet Waterhouse script, because, I'll be able to say I think there's some people here who might be interested in watching this. And we'll see.
Yeah, you'll be able to.
That's showbiz, baby.
You'll be able to have actual analytics to back up your claim there.
Right.
Do you still have a family movie that you're working on?
Yes, I have two. One is a finished script called Thin Ice, which is a really fun movie about an African-American politician in Chicago who has to find his long-lost son in northern Minnesota to save his political career. And the kid is 16 now, and he's sort of the Tiger Woods of snowmobiling, and he was raised by, Paul Bunyan and his wife, and he doesn't know basketball from anything, but he knows how to hunt and fish, and he talks like everybody else up in northern Minnesota, but he's black, eh? And it's a funny fish out of water. Our African-American politician has to learn how to polka and learn how to snowmobile and learn how to ice fish, and all in an attempt to bond with his son and create family. And that's called Thin Ice. We're out shopping that right now. And then I got another vehicle that, knock on wood, will divide. I don't even want to say what it is yet, but it's an animated family movie that, knock on wood, will get some traction as well. I'm hoping this is a good year for me, Steve.
Well, it's getting off to a good start. I mean, you got Chet Waterhouse podcast happening. You're on this podcast. I mean, you're just blowing it out both pant legs, man.
Exactly. What more can I ask for?
Please tell me that when you do cast Thin Ice and you're looking for that Chicago politician, that Kenan Thompson is in the running. That guy, I think he'd be great.
He's already in the running, yes. Absolutely. I think he may be the funniest person on SNL right now. Every time he comes on screen, I'm already laughing. And I already have that sense that happens with your best SNL performers. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen. There's some unpredictability with Kenan out there. And that is awesome. There's just a teeny bit of danger. And that's what you need. That's what separates the greats, I think. And, I'd love to have him on board. He's hilarious.
You're not wrong. That guy is amazing. Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap you up. Tell everybody where they can find you and where they can find Play with Pain.
You can follow me at Real Jeff Cesario on Twitter. You can follow my sports alter ego, Chet Waterhouse, at Chet Waterhouse on Twitter. You can go to Podcast One or Apple Podcasts and find Play with Pain, the Chet Waterhouse podcast. And you can always catch me every couple of weeks on the Adam Carolla Show on Podcast One. That, I think, will do it.
I think that absolutely does do it. Thank you again, Jeff. I appreciate it, man. You have a great rest of your day. And I'm going to be...
You too, Steve. Thanks a lot.
I'm going to be in L.A. in a couple of weeks, and if you happen to be around the Adam Carolla studios, maybe I'll run into you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Thanks, Jeff.
You got it, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Hey, guys. If you like what I'm doing, rate and review the podcast on iTunes and wherever else you're getting the podcast. And if you do order things from Amazon, it would really help me out if you use that Amazon banner that's on the website at fascinationstreetpod.com and just click through whenever you're buying stuff from Amazon. You can click through the first time and then save that to your favorites or bookmark it. And every time you use it, you don't have to go to the website to get there. I appreciate it, guys. Enjoy. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.